They were a loving couple living the American dream.
They came to America seeking stability, seeking success.
They really had to hustle and work hard.
They made a better life for themselves.
Until a horrible crime destroyed everything they held dear.
Get out of my house.
Somebody's in the house.
She can hear her husband. He's screaming.
This was a really traumatizing situation.
He was badly beaten.
There's a lot of blood.
This had to be her worst nightmare.
Was the horrific attack a home invasion?
Someone jimmied the locks.
The house looks ransacked.
Or does this happy couple have deadly secrets?
Someone was skimming money from the landscaping business.
You started to hear about affairs.
It was a casual fling.
They said that was the motive for murder.
December 29th, 2009. It's the dead of night in Lithonia, Georgia, a peaceful community 30 miles east of Atlanta.
Lithonia is a small country town turned bedroom community.
It's a quiet place where people come to buy a home and get away from the city.
But even in the sleepiest suburb, safety isn't guaranteed.
At 2 a.m., the Cab 911 received a frantic phone call from a homeowner.
The caller is 48-year-old Pamela Ballin.
Cab County 911.
It sounds like somebody's in the house.
She heard ransacking throughout the house. Lots of loud noises, things falling, things being broken.
Tell me, where are you at in the house, ma'am?
Closet.
You're in the closet?
But a panicked Pamela tells the dispatcher that she's terrified for her husband, 53-year-old Ricky Ballin.
Where's your husband at, ma'am?
I don't know, right?
She said she heard her husband fighting with an intruder.
Somebody was hitting on him.
She also hears him say, "Gun, get a gun, get a gun."
But scared for her life, Pamela instead hid in the closet to call for help.
Do you still hear voices in the house?
But Pamela tells the dispatcher she does hear someone.
What did you hear?
My husband calling for me.
Her husband was downstairs calling for help.
I should go downstairs.
No, ma'am. Just stay where you are.
Originally from the island of Jamaica, Pamela and Ricky Ballin came to America in 1984.
They'd just gotten married and were excited to start a family together.
They decided it would be best to migrate to America.
Like a lot of immigrants, Pamela and Ricky had to hustle to establish themselves.
They settled in Lithonia, a quiet suburb of Atlanta, which seemed like the perfect place to raise a family.
Pamela was able to find a job as a travel agent. And then Ricky, he was basically taking any job that he could get his hands on.
It was a constant scramble to make ends meet. But the couple was determined to build a better life for themselves and their children.
Derek Jr. had been born shortly after the family arrived in the States.
Ricky also had an older son named David from a previous relationship.
Although born in Jamaica, David was living in Boston with his mom.
He was able to come down for summers to visit with his father, Ricky, his stepmother, and his younger brother.
And by the time they were teenagers, both boys were busy helping their father.
Ricky had always dreamed of owning his own business, and before long, he had established his own landscaping company.
It was small to begin with, but Ricky really hustled hard.
He did quality work and had a great reputation.
And as suburban Atlanta boomed, so did Ricky's business.
More houses meant more yards needed landscaping, and Ricky was right on it.
Before long, Ricky was able to buy more moors He hired workers to add additional trucks and crews and was able to bid on much larger projects.
His business began to really take off.
Eventually, they were able to enjoy all of the benefits of middle-class success.
The couple bought a big, beautiful home.
They were able to live well, send their kids to good schools, travel.
All the while, Ricky's business kept growing.
The projects were getting bigger and bigger.
Ricky found himself landing six-figure commercial landscaping contracts.
Pamela quit her job and she joined her husband's company.
Ricky and Pamela really worked well together as a team.
Ricky was the front man who was out there handling the crews and handling the projects. Pamela was behind the scenes handling the books and helping to run the business.
And by 2009, the Ballins were an American success story.
Ricky and Pamela were proud of what they had built together.
But now a horrific crime threatens to tear it all apart. On December 29, 2009, Lithonia 911 has just received a terrified call from Pamela.
Pamela had just called 911 to report what sounded like a break-in.
She can hear what sounds like a struggle happening downstairs. Her husband fighting with the intruder.
Even more terrifying, Pam says she can hear Ricky calling out for help.
You think I should go downstairs to my
No,
husband?
ma'am.
The dispatcher warns her that the intruder may still be in the house.
Wait until the officer clears the location.
That had to be so terrifying for her, knowing something is going on with her husband and not being able to respond or react for fear of something happening to her.
She spends a majority of the 911 call pleading with the dispatcher to allow her to go check on him.
I need to go downstairs.
Stay where you are.
After several agonizing minutes, police arrive on the scene.
The front door was locked, and despite the situation, officers didn't break it down.
Then after urging her to stay put, the dispatcher asked her to go downstairs to let in the police.
Stay on the phone with me and go and get the door.
Are you sure?
Yes, ma'am.
Still on the line with the operator, Pamela heads downstairs.
She breaks down completely as she lets the officers inside.
The police find Ricky lying on the foyer floor.
There's a lot of blood. It's just a total mess.
It's a wife's worst nightmare.
With a successful landscaping business and a beautiful suburban home, immigrants Ricky and Pamela Ballin were an American success story.
By the end of 2009, Ricky and Pamela were really proud of what they had accomplished.
It wasn't easy. It required a lot of hard work, but they had built a life here in America.
Only now their American dream has turned into a nightmare.
Pamela just called 911 to report what sounds like a burglary in progress.
She believed Ricky had tried to fight off the intruder.
As she went downstairs to let the officers in, she saw her husband's bloody body lying next to the front door.
Ricky's badly beaten, and he's bleeding profusely from the head.
Imagine going downstairs and seeing your husband almost near to death.
Once Pamela's safely outside, officers sweep the house for the intruder.
The intruder apparently left the scene, but the house is ransacked.
Once the house was cleared, EMTs transport Ricky to the hospital.
Ricky was in really bad shape. He was non-communicative.
He is clinging to life.
As they load him into the ambulance, Pamela tries to climb on board, too.
Pamela was insistent that she get inside.
But detectives arrived on the scene, and they asked Pamela to wait to give them a statement.
Look, ma'am, I know you want to go be with your husband,
but we really need to...
She was on the scene when the break-in occurred. So unless Ricky survives, she's their best witness.
I'll do what I can, but I really didn't see anything.
They asked her a lot of questions. She was cooperative.
According to Pamela, the night started off unexceptionally.
She said she had gotten home from the gym. Ricky was sitting in his favorite chair, surfing the internet.
You coming up to bed?
I'll be up in a minute.
Okay, I'm gonna go get that shower.
Pam said Ricky was still in his chair when she went upstairs.
She went to shower and she went to bed.
But Pamela says she woke up around 2 a.m.
She didn't know why she'd woken up, but when she did, Ricky wasn't in bed.
That was not unusual for him, because he kept real late hours. He liked to watch TV.
Once awake, Pamela says she'd gotten up and gone to the bathroom.
She's in there for a while when she starts hearing sounds.
What kind of sounds?
Sounds like something moving around downstairs.
Someone other than Ricky.
She says she heard Ricky say to someone, "Who are you? What are you doing here?"
That made her believe that there was an intruder in the house.
And according to Pamela, what Ricky said next erased any doubt.
She says she heard Ricky yell up to her to go get the gun.
Ricky wanted me to get the gun. He keeps it in the nightstand by the bed.
But you didn't get it?
No, I was too afraid.
She cheerfully admitted that she should have gotten the gun, but she was too afraid.
She instead locked herself in the bedroom.
Pamela says that as she huddled in the bathroom, Ricky had apparently tried to fight off the intruder.
Pam said that that's when she heard the crashing and the banging downstairs, like there was some kind of struggle.
She said she wasn't entirely sure how long she had stayed hidden in the bathroom.
It could have been 2 minutes, it could have been 10 minutes. She was too terrified to note.
I was too afraid, thinking they were gonna come up there and find me.
They? So there was more than one intruder?
I don't know, maybe?
She says that she heard ransacking throughout the house. Lots of loud noises, things falling, things being broken.
Until, according to Pamela, the noises suddenly stopped.
She heard it get quiet downstairs, and she thought that that was an opportunity to dash to the bedroom, get the phone, and call 911.
Even though she didn't hear anyone, Pamela was scared the intruders were still in the house, so she hid in the closet and called for help.
Pamela says it was while on the phone with 911 that she heard a new, horrifying sound.
She can hear Ricky faintly calling out for her.
Pam begins desperately pleading with the dispatcher to allow her to go check on her husband.
Ricky was calling for me, and I told her I should go down there and help him.
But the dispatcher says, "No, stay where you are, where it's safe."
She said she hadn't gone back downstairs until the police arrived.
She saw Ricky lying on the foyer floor.
I should have came down sooner.
She feels very guilty.
In hindsight, she should have gotten the gun, but she was too afraid.
It was a traumatic situation, to be sure.
This must have been her worst nightmare.
And it was about to get worse.
Just as Pamela was finishing her statement, the detectives got an urgent call from the hospital. I should have came down sooner.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Pam, you need to go to the hospital.
Oh my God.
If she wants to see Ricky one last time, she better get to the hospital.
According to research released by the U.S. Department of Justice, there are an estimated 2.5 million burglaries nationwide each year. Of these, 66% are home invasions, but only 13% lead to an arrest due to lack of witnesses or physical evidence. While talking to detectives about the apparent home invasion and vicious assault on her husband, Ricky, Pamela Ballin has just received horrific news.
Pam learns that if she wants to see Ricky one last time, she has to get to the hospital immediately.
A neighbor drives the distraught Pamela to Atlanta's Grady Memorial Hospital.
Grady is the premier trauma center in the region. Grady has a reputation for saving people.
But there's nothing they can do for Ricky.
When Pamela arrives at the hospital, she receives notice that there's no hope for Ricky's recovery.
Ricky was struck in the head with a blunt object. He's essentially brain dead.
He could survive indefinitely on life support, but he will never regain consciousness.
When Pamela and Ricky's son, Derek Jr., arrive at the hospital, he and his mother face a difficult choice.
Pam knew that quality of life was really important. And at that moment, she had to decide whether or not she would make her husband live an existence that wasn't consistent with the man that he was, just for her sake, because she wanted him around. And she chose to let him go.
It wasn't just Pamela's decision, it was Pamela and their adult son's decision to ask that no further resuscitative means be utilized.
For detectives at the crime scene, it means their investigation will soon be upgraded to a homicide. And the evidence points to a likely motive.
Based on the scene, police were thinking that this started out as a robbery.
The house was ransacked.
There was furniture everywhere, drawers poured out.
Pictures hanging off the wall, broken glass pieces on the floor.
The Christmas tree was turned over.
They also found blood spatter all throughout the first floor, so it looks like there was a knockdown, drag-out struggle.
In the foyer, near where the killer left Ricky for dead, detectives also find what they believe to be the murder weapon.
Not far from the foyer, there was a decorative statue that was smeared with blood, and it appeared heavy enough and solid enough to have caused Ricky's injuries.
Finally, at the back of the house, detectives find where the intruders apparently made entry.
They find pry marks on the back door.
The intruder apparently jimmied the lock.
It appeared the person had planned to slip in and out quietly while everyone was asleep.
They didn't expect anyone to be downstairs.
Based on all the signs, his death appears to be the result of a burglary gone wrong.
Except there's one thing that doesn't add up.
Nothing appears to be missing.
The TV, the jewelry, the cash, the valuables, they were still there in plain sight.
Which naturally raises questions for detectives.
Had the killer or the thieves lost their nerve? Or had the crime scene been staged to look like a robbery to cover Ricky's murder?
Looking for answers, police canvass the area and speak with the Ballins' neighbors.
The neighbors are obviously upset and scared because things like this don't happen in this type of neighborhood.
Did you see or hear?
Lithonia, the crime rate is considerably low comparing to Atlanta, Fulton County, or Gwinnett County.
Neighbors were especially horrified that something like this had happened to the Ballins.
Everyone the detective spoke with said that Pamela and Ricky were nice neighbors and a great couple.
People knew them as hardworking people. They were nice people and were very shocked that this happened.
Neighbors have no idea who would want to hurt Ricky.
Nor had anyone witnessed anything suspicious in the neighborhood that night.
No one has heard anything. No one saw anything.
Although one neighbor says she did observe something odd recently.
One neighbor said that she noticed a strange vehicle, a black SUV, parked across from the Ballins' home on several occasions.
She said it was almost as if someone was watching the Ballins' house.
The detectives wondered if Ricky was having trouble with someone that the neighbors might not have known about.
Could he have been in debt to someone? Was he dealing with a disgruntled employee? Or really, it could be anyone.
As the sun rises and detectives head back to the station, it isn't long before they get the news they've been anticipating.
At about 10 a.m. that morning, Ricky dies.
With the clock ticking now to find Ricky's murderer, investigators waste no time inviting Pamela down to the station to give a formal statement.
Coming in, I know this is a difficult time for you.
Pamela was still very upset, and she seems shocked that anyone would want to break in their home and harm Ricky.
I thought this was just a burglary.
Well, that's what we're trying to find out.
Pamela told detectives that as far as she knew, Ricky didn't have any enemies.
Was he having any problems with the business?
No.
However, there's one other possibility that detectives will need to rule out.
They started asking her questions about whether she had been seeing anyone, whether Ricky had been seeing anyone. A lot of personal questions.
No, everything was fine.
Pamela also says she has no idea who might be in the black SUV a neighbor spotted lurking around the house in the days leading up to the murder.
No, I don't know anything about that.
But while Pamela's statement offers no new leads for detectives,
Hi, Derek.
Pamela and Ricky's son, Derek Jr.'s, does.
There's something about my dad y'all probably need to know about.
He says that detectives should talk to his dad's girlfriend.
His girlfriend?
Yeah. He tells authorities that his father had been having an affair.
Pamela and Ricky Ballin's son, Derek Jr., has just revealed to detectives that his father may have been having an affair at the time of his death.
According to his son, the woman that his dad had been having an affair with was an Atlanta woman by the name of Carolyn Hodges.
She's an old family friend that Ricky had run into at a family funeral.
How do you know he was having an affair?
He wasn't exactly discreet.
Derek says that he overheard his dad chatting with the woman on the phone on several occasions.
Now, did your mom know about his girlfriend?
I tried to tell her.
Derek Jr. told police that his mom didn't believe it and didn't want to hear it.
The detectives are definitely interested, though.
Maybe the mistress was angry that Ricky wasn't giving her what she wanted.
All right, I'll walk you out.
Attempting to confirm whether Ricky was truly having an affair, investigators pull his phone records.
What they discover is several late-night phone calls that trace back to Carolyn Hodges.
There was even a phone call the night of the incident between Ricky and this woman.
However, when detectives bring Caroline in for questioning, she says that was no affair.
She says that she and Ricky were merely old friends.
She admits that her and Ricky did talk on the phone quite often. She said it was just catching up at first, and ultimately it led to Ricky talking to her because he wanted her advice.
Advice about what?
Well, he and Pam were going through a rough patch.
What did you say?
According to Caroline, it was Pam, not Ricky, who had been having the affair.
She said that Ricky found out he just didn't know what to do about it.
No.
Caroline says that Pam's boyfriend was a police officer named Antonio Vargas.
According to Carolyn, Antonio and Pam go to the same gym. And when Ricky found out about the affair, he was very upset.
But she says he also blamed himself.
He had been so focused on his business and working long hours.
I told him talk to Pam about it.
Well, did he follow your advice?
Yes.
Ricky had confronted Pam about the affair, and she had broken things off with Vargas.
Her and Ricky had reconciled, and were going to do their best to make the most of it.
If Caroline's telling the truth, detectives see a few possibilities.
Vargas was angry about the breakup. Did he possibly seek revenge by killing Ricky?
Or maybe Pam hadn't really ended things with Vargas.
Maybe they were plotting together to remove Ricky from the picture so that they could be together.
Or could the most likely scenario be that Caroline was pointing the finger at Pam to throw detectives off her track?
Maybe she wanted to be more than friends with Ricky and gotten angry when he rejected her.
However, a quick check of Caroline's phone records rules her out as a suspect.
According to her cell phone records, she had called Ricky from her sister's house in North Carolina.
There's no way that she could have committed the crime.
What's more, it appears there may be something to Caroline's story about Antonio Vargas.
They determined that he owned an SUV that was similar to the SUV that neighbors reported that was lurking in the neighborhood.
Was it possible that Vargas had been scoping out the scene?
But if that was the case, why didn't Pamela say anything when detectives brought it up with her? When investigators bring Antonio in for questioning, he doesn't deny the affair.
We just met at the gym. You know, one thing leads to another.
He said she felt neglected by her husband, so he was more than happy to step in.
You still seeing her?
Nah, we just hooked up a few times.
He characterizes it as just a fling.
He says that he really didn't care whether or not she reconciled with her husband.
That's when investigators confront him about the black SUV.
Then why are you hanging around her place?
What are you talking about?
He denies that it was his SUV in the neighborhood.
Look, if an SUV looks like mine, it's just a coincidence.
Antonio also denies having anything to do with Ricky's death.
When he was asked what he was doing the night of the murder, he said he was working.
A quick check with the Atlanta police appears to confirm Antonio's alibi.
He was on duty at the time of the murder and had answered a call a half hour away from the crime scene.
They ruled him out as a suspect.
It looks as if the investigation is at a dead end. Until Ricky's son, David, arrives from Boston with new information for detectives.
There's something you ought to know.
Well, tell us.
He tells the detectives that his father was furious over the fact that she was skimming money from the landscaping business.
David says it all started when his father asked Pamela to take over running things in the office.
He preferred to be physically on the job site and doing the hands-on work.
However, according to David, trouble soon surfaced.
When he did check the books, he noticed what he thought were some irregularities.
You talked to her about it? Yeah.
David stated his stepmom assured Ricky that it was no big deal. She just had different ways of doing things than what he was used to.
David said that his father had bought Pam's excuses at first.
David says that things eventually came to a head when his dad started having trouble paying the company's bills and meeting payroll.
Man, this doesn't make sense. What's going on with the money?
Ricky, I've told you where the money is going.
I can't even pay the employees.
David said his dad was so upset that he was about to open up a separate bank account that Pam wouldn't have access to.
According to David, Ricky was so fed up, he was ready to file for divorce.
Well, do you know who was handling your dad's divorce?
Well, I'm not sure he'd gotten that far.
Ricky had not filed for divorce or actually reached out to an attorney. The detectives only had David's word for it.
But when police start digging deeper into the Ballins' marriage, they discover that Pamela may have had a bigger motive than anyone imagined.
There was a life insurance policy with Pamela as the beneficiary.
Shortly before his murder, Ricky had drastically increased his life insurance coverage.
Pamela stood to gain more than $1 million from her husband's death.
DeKalb County detectives have just discovered that Pamela Ballin may have had a powerful motive to murder her husband, Ricky.
Prior to Ricky's murder, his life insurance policy had been drastically increased.
Pamela stood to gain more than $1 million from her husband's death.
The landscaping business, their big, beautiful home, all of their assets, and everything that they owned would be hers and hers alone.
Yeah. But according to her stepson, David, the window for Pamela to collect had been closing fast.
According to David, Ricky was ready to file for divorce.
But before he could even file for a divorce or consult a lawyer, he was murdered.
Did that mean Pamela had killed him? Detectives suspect that's the case, but they have little proof.
There was no forensic evidence tying Pamela to the murder.
With their hands tied, detectives bring Pamela back into the station. this time to confront her with her lies.
With no other leads and no other suspects, they hope to pry a confession out of her.
Why did you lie to us about the affair?
Because it was over. My husband just died, and I didn't see any reason for airing out our dirty laundry.
The detectives also pressed Pamela about the $1 million insurance policy.
Well, why did you increase the insurance policy?
That was not my idea.
She said this is something that they did jointly.
Still, the detectives keep pressing.
They questioned her for hours.
Come on, Pam. You did it. And then you tried to make it look like a break-in.
Detective, I would never hurt Ricky.
She stuck to her story that this was actually a home invasion.
But the fact that Pamela won't crack makes no difference to detectives.
At the end of the interview, they placed Pam under arrest for murder.
There were just too many inconsistencies in her version of events for detectives to ignore.
News of Pam's arrest stuns the couple's neighbors.
This appeared to be a perfect couple.
It was really hard for people to wrap their mind around the fact that Pam could do something so heinous.
But as you started to hear about affairs and you started to hear about skimming, some people thought, could she have done it?
When the case goes to trial in June of 2014, the prosecutors begin by arguing that Pamela was the only person with a clear motive to kill her husband.
A pending divorce, a life insurance policy of more than $1 million. They said that was the motive for murder.
They maintained that Pamela Ballin was a woman who was looking to get out of a marriage that she was no longer happy in. The fact that she'd had an affair, and that she would get the spoils of the business if her husband was no longer around.
So, according to the prosecutors, Pamela had killed her husband in cold blood.
Prosecutors alleged that Ricky was asleep in his recliner on the first floor of the couple's home.
Pam crept up as he slept.
She was armed with a statue she'd grabbed off a nearby table.
There was no struggle. Ricky was incapacitated after the first blow.
Once he was down, she dragged her dying husband into the foyer.
Then, as her husband lay dying in the foyer, Pamela faked a home invasion.
They were painting a good picture for the jury that this was a scene that appeared to be staged.
Prosecutors focused on the fact that while the house appeared to be ransacked, no valuables seemed to, and there was very little damage to any of their possessions.
The stage set. Prosecutors claimed that Pamela had cleaned herself and then placed a carefully rehearsed call to 911.
She proceeded to give the performance of a lifetime.
When it's the defense's turn, Pamela's attorney claims that the prosecution's case is pure speculation.
Prosecution's theory sounded good, but they had no real proof.
There was simply no evidence to indicate that these two individuals were at the cusp of a divorce, and certainly no divorce that was pending at the time, and no evidence to support that assertion other than some hearsay.
What you working on, babe?
The defense also pushes back on the notion that Pamela was after Ricky's money.
They called an accountant to the stand, and he said he viewed the books, and he found no evidence that Pam had been skimming money from the company.
Pamela wasn't taking any money from the business wasn't losing any money. There was simply nothing to support that assertion. And that's all it was an assertion. You know, there were statements given by folks who thought that this was the reason that Pamela and Ricky were not getting along, and there simply wasn't any evidence to support it. And the books, the paperwork, and the testimony of the accountant himself disproved that.
Most of all, according to the defense, the prosecution's entire theory was based on a false assumption.
The most devastating blow to the prosecutor's case is when the defense brought the insurance agent to the stand
The insurance agent testified that he was the person who had actually suggested that the policy be increased. They could have gotten more coverage under a different policy, and it made sense to him, and it ultimately made sense to Pamela and to Ricky, who agreed to have the policy increased. So this theory that this was a murder for insurance money just didn't really hold any water.
In fact, the defense is so confident that they destroy the prosecution's arguments that they ask the judge to dismiss the case.
It's called a directed verdict of acquittal.
In a shocking blow to the prosecution, the judge decides to consider it.
He said, I'm going to take it under advisement.
But not before he hears the jury's verdict first.
He wanted the case to go to the jury.
After the jury made their decision, the judge would decide whether to accept the verdict or throw it out.
We don't believe there's enough evidence for this case to even go to the jury. Now, we asked for it to be dismissed. The judge didn't do it. He didn't rule on it. He said, I'm going to hold off on ruling on that, which is very odd. Now, my opinion, having practiced for 20-some-odd years, is that the judge thought that she was going to be acquitted. And he didn't want to be the one to make the decision. He wanted the jury to go ahead and acquit her.
53-year-old Pamela Ballin's murder trial has just taken an unprecedented turn.
Pam had been accused of killing her husband, Ricky, in order to collect his $1 million life insurance policy.
The defense was so sure the prosecution had not proved its case, they asked the judge to throw out the charges.
The judge decided to wait and to defer to the jury's ruling before he made any decisions.
When they heard his decision, the defense and Pamela's family thought that the judge was expecting an acquittal.
Would they be mistaken?
After a significant amount of deliberation, the jury came back and they found Pamela guilty.
Pam's family was totally blindsided and could not understand how the jury arrived at that decision.
On the other hand, Ricky's family and supporters were very pleased with the jury's decision. They thought they got it right.
Now the question is whether the judge will abide by their decision.
He still had the option of throwing out the case and the guilty verdict.
When the jury came back and found her guilty, he was just as surprised as we were.
Although it became apparent that he was in no hurry to make his decision.
The judge decided he needed a month to decide whether or not to toss out the case.
I honestly believe that the court simply thought that the jury got it wrong, notwithstanding the jury verdict, and set Pamela free. The court allowed Miss Ballin to go home.
Pam was released on bond and would remain free until the judge came back with a decision.
This time, it's Ricky's family who were blindsided and outraged.
It's just a slap in the face for the whole family.
She walked out the courtroom just like we did.
I feel like he was just killed all over again. That's how I felt, because we didn't get justice.
Ricky's family gave interviews to the television news reporters, proclaiming how the judge had allowed a murderer to go free.
As far as they were concerned, Pamela shouldn't be out walking the streets.
The prosecutors are just as livid.
The DA is so upset by this that in just a few days, he's able to make a motion to have Pam brought back into custody pending the judge's decision on the motion.
There was so much commotion, there was so much made of it, that ultimately the judge had Miss Ballin come back in.
But would she soon be out again? It all comes down to the judge's decision.
Pam's family, friends, and attorney are all confident that Pam will be freed once the judge makes his ruling. But it's their turn to be outraged once again when the judge affirms the jury's verdict of murder.
The judge ultimately sentenced her on a murder charge.
And since she was found guilty of murder, there was only one sentence the judge can hand down.
Georgia doesn't have degrees of murder. She was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison.
The outcome is a startling reversal for Pamela and her family, one they refuse to accept.
We filed an appeal. We filed what's called a motion for new trial. Another judge looked at that motion for new trial and decided that there were irregularities, that she had not been fairly tried, and the case was overturned.
She was granted a new trial in 2017.
At this point, the prosecution knows what the defense's arguments are. And so they tried a different case. It was a more emotional case. Pamela testified, whereas she did not in the first trial. Ultimately, I believe the jury made their decision in that second trial upon whether they found Pamela to be credible or not. I don't believe they did. And that second jury found her guilty.
For Ricky's family, it was a hard-earned victory.
The right person is behind bars. The right person was implicated for his murder.
Meanwhile, Pamela's supporters remain just as convinced she has suffered a great injustice.
You're never going to be able to convince me that Pamela Ballin murdered Ricky Ballin.
Although no matter who killed Pamela's husband, there's one thing everyone agrees on.
Ricky did not deserve to die this way.
This was a loving father, a man who people said was universally admired for his hard work. Starting from nothing, he made the American dream come true, only to lose it in the most horrible way.
It's really an all-around tragedy for everybody involved.
The fingers were here. The force applied was considerable. She was choked to death, Archie. The fire was an afterthought, an attempt to turn a homicide investigation into a very messy pile of ashes. On leaning closer. Nighten. Oniket matized. A surface scratch on the left wrist. Von Houten said, deep enough to open the skin. It happened right around the time of death. It is consistent with someone forcibly pulling something off her arm. Something tight, like a heavy band, ankled. Her daughter mentioned she wore for solid gold bangles, 6 of them, from India. From India. Hand engraved. Obi. Well, they aren't tea here now. Von Houten, covering the body. With a heavy sigh. Though if you find them, let me know. My wife has a birthday coming up, and Mott Met currently looking for something that says, Mott love you without costing me a month's pension. Lucintetly. More don't think a murder weapon would make a very good anniversary gift. Fritz, Archie said, turning on his heel. Brofton. Von Houten called after him. It shows Mott Met thinking about her safety. All chapter ba. The geometry of a secret romance. Coriad Marriott. The Butteried, bin into be, occupying. The Butterfield family was at the local occupying the execute, a suite, a room that featured a carpet the color of split pea soup, and a framed print of an indeterminate sailboat that seemed to be listing to the port side. Oamantater, intent in Tontibi, but is still aggressive stride, Badis liquidator. Clementine Butterfield, the 20-year-old daughter, 20-year-lick daughter, with the aggressive stride of a corporate liquidator, in Lisnihwil parade. Wamatli, and she eula traumatized. She was wearing comadatamataid, agreed in Druatimportais, all katomadatide, while bide for a military parade. And she held a tablet in one hand, occasionally tapping the screen with a stylus, as if she were trying to puncture it. Corp enough to carve a turkey. Believe in tragedy, she believed in logistics. If a scone did not rise, it was because the flour supplier had lied about the protein content. If she is dead, or sleeting, it is because someone had a highly irregular business plan. Rukindon Cromet. Clementine, Archie said, sitting on the edge of a remarkably stiff armchair that squeaked whenever he breathed. Tell me about her daily routine. Oni can send. without looking up from her screen. Communalisquot, Anofli. She performed 30 breathing exercises for the flour dust. She then prepared 42 batches of scones. She did not delegate the baking. She said, "Had my brother, hands were too damp, and my father's mind was too easily distracted by sports on the radio. We can quite traumatized." Alistair Butterfield sat on the edge of the bed. Alistair looking entirely hollowed out. He was a small man with a mustache that looked like a very sad caterpillar that had given up on its dream of becoming a butterfly. He nodded whenever Clementine spoke, but his eyes remained fixed on his shoes. "Aunt."
"Where is Pip?"
Whippy, Tentleby, awfully. "Pip is currently in the bathroom," Clementine said, her stylus clicking for 40 minutes. "He claims he is washing his hands, but Mort believes he is attempting to hide from his responsibilities. He has always had the constitution of an over-whipped meringue, wanting a bean." And 7Q, the bathroom door, Pip Butterfield, emerged. He was wearing a green hoodie that was several sizes too large, making him look like an anxious turtle attempting to retreat into its shell, or need to ask you about Tuesday afternoon. "You were the last person to see your mother before the fire," Oathide, his Adam hard, apple bobbing like a cork in a bucket of water. "Yes, sir. Maud left the house at 3 o'clock. She was fine. She was making dinner for that butter chicken. She told me to be back by 6, or she'd feed might or portion to the neighbor's cat. Guldy kill." "And where did you go at 3 o'clock, Pip?" "Aunt don't know." Pip stammered, his eyes darting toward the window. "Offer, Geist." "Pip, tell the inspector where you were, or Mort will tell father about the dent in the bumper of the Honda that you claimed was caused by a highly aggressive deer. Was meeting, offer B. IT. Hot absolute Penelope over his notepad. His pen hovering over his notepad. Billy said. She sent to be from the organic kale farming commune. On the other side of the canal, Pip whispered, as if admitting to a minor treason. Infinity. In our family, we are not allowed to date. Especially, not someone from the commune. Mother said their farming practices were unscientific, and that Penelope's father once tried to pay for a delivery of flour they kept te. Hat. 3 baskets of unwashed parsnips. If mother knew Mort was seeing her, Gineld, she would have grounded me until the next millennium, wanting traumatized. So you went to the park to meet Penelope, Archie said. And you stayed there until when? Until 5, Pip said. We were discussing soil pH levels. It was very educational. Want. Did you see anyone the house when you left at 3? On in traumatize. No, just the usual. The mailman. The squirrel that always tries to eat the tomatoes. And well, there was a truck. When? What kind of truck? White one, Pip said, but it was very noisy. It sounded like a lawnmower that was being dragged through a gravel pit. Underneath. Archie wrote noisy white truck in his notebook and checked it off. Thank you, Pip. You've been very helpful. Try not to worry about the deer. We're more interested in the truck. Gonbinsky and again. The inventory of the golden kitchen. Ocean. More. Mabid. The walkthrough of Mabibon accompanying affair. Clementine had insisted on accompanying Archie, primarily because she did not trust the local police to inventory the property correctly. Community site. My was an accumulator of high-value culinary assets, Clementine explained as they stepped over a blackened floorboard. She didn't keep cash in the house. She thought paper currency was dirty, but she had other things, significant things. offing tentais. Archie asked, shining his flashlight into the ruined cabinets. One the mother in Punjab. Solid 22-karat gold, coalition traumatized. Hand engraved with scenes from traditional folklore. She had 6 of them. They weren't just decorative. She actually used them for special orders. Monetized, she said. The weight of the gold. A superior lamination. White beam wavering. Archie stopped. Gold rolling pins? How large were they? Inches squealy. About 12 inches long, quite slender, but very heavy, Clementine said. 2 of them she kept in the kitchen display rack. The other 4 were in a small, fireproof strongbox in her closet, over the display socket, near the stove. The metal hooks were empty. He shone his light on the counter below. There was a faint, clean, circular outline in the soot where something heavy had been resting. Intently. Are they still in the strongbox? Archie asked. Untin Finsai. Clementine led him to the master bedroom. The closet door was open. The strongbox, a heavy gray unit that looked like it had survived a nuclear blast, sat on the shelf. The door was slightly ajar. Commonly traumatized. Clementine said, her voice finally losing its icy composure. Never. Any deed. Inside were several deeds, a marriage certificate, and a collection of silver teaspoons. Wetized. The gold rolling pins were gone. Honestly. Well, Archie said, pulling out his notebook. We have a motive, a highly specific, extremely heavy motive. Who can not have kept about these rolling pins, Clementine? Otlin she again. Everyone, she said bitterly. She showed them to anyone who she was proud of them. She said they were proof that you could come to this country with nothing, and eventually roll your dough with solid gold. Offer Archie tight. We looked along the local antique dealers and gold buyers, Archie said. A 12-inch gold rolling pin is not something you can easily slip into a pawn shop without raising an eyebrow or two. Those of the engravings, Clementine said, tapping her tablet. Mott will email them to you immediately. If Mott find out some low life has melted them down to make tooth crowns, Mott will personally sue them into the next century. We get the smoke and the mirrors, Omplisinly. The Arsonist Symphony, all white twice. Offer Wes. Archie S. office. A drafty room in the basement of them old tax records, wet wool, and the damp survivalism of rural administration, was invaded by a man who looked like he had been constructed entirely out of pipe cleaners and enthusiasm. Is Barnaby Sparky Finch, the man said, offering a hand that was covered in small pink burn scars. Mott met the retired fire warden for the next county over. Mott heard about the Butterfield fire. Mott had to call you, Archie said, squinting through his reading glasses. Mott, often seen your name on old reports. You read the fellow who wrote a 300-page monograph on the thermal dynamics of chimney sweeps. Otwide. 342 pages, actually, Finch said proudly, sitting down on the edge of Archie S. desk. With diagrams. But that's not why Mott met here. Archie, have you ever heard of a man named Gideon Gentry? Comanche local. Is he a local? Artisanal, firewood deliveryman. Finch said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But in my book, he said a firebug, a real artist of the hearth. Over the last 5 years, Gentry has been associated with 8 different house fires in this region. One sat up, his interest piqued. 8? That says a very active chimney. On tie size. The bow riziklais odai retaily maintenance. Every single time. A frequent visitor, or had recently for preventative maintenance on the flu, Finch said. If you were small, a bird's nest in a chimney that accidentally caught fire, a pile of rags in a basement. The insurance companies paid out. Gentry moved on. But the eighth one destroyed an entire historical farmhouse in the valley. 2 cars in the driveway completely melted. Weechel charged comically, finching his head. He uses natural, shaking his head. Pine sap, linseed oil, things that tend to show up on a standard gas chromatograph. He clammed up whenever Mott tried to interview him. But he is a wolf in sheep's clothing, Archie. He has got the town convinced he is just a harmless Grooknaud, who loves the smell of birchwood, Way asked. Twice. He delivered 3 cords of seasoned cherry wood to their house. Last month, Finch said. Mott checked the municipal delivery permits. He was on their property, Archie. He has been inside that house, Bonatimatized. Archie who loves fires. A man who loves fires. Who had been associated suspicious blaze and who recently delivered wood to a house that subsequently burned down with the owner inside. If it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, Finch, what usually a duck's, that has been marinated in lighter fluid. Finch completed. Onforin Sao. The duct tape chariot. Untu is being entitled. Archie Anson Kobolski. A man who looked carry heavy filing cabinets up 3 flights of stairs. Found Gideon Gentry at his workshop on the edge of town. Unyutukandud. The workshop was a chaotic jumble of iron grates and stacks of firewood that looked like they had been piled by a drunk beaver. In the center of the yard sat a white Ford Econoline van that was held together almost entirely by silver duct tape. Wilyozu. Baisubabi Nostist. The tape was wrapped around the rust well across the rear bumper and in a massive glittering X across the side panel where a business logo had once been. Large, jolly man, with a beard that looked like a bird had nested in it, and subsequently abandoned the property. He was currently drinking tea from a chipped mug, looking entirely unconcerned with the world. Onatized. Detective, Gentry boomed, his voice echoing off the corrugated iron roof. Come to buy some cedar. It's excellent for the moth problem. Or perhaps you need your chimney swept. Mott do a special rate for the police, mostly because Mott don't want you boys checking my taillights. A pile of rusty iron grates. Reichen, we actually here to talk about Tuesday afternoon, the 14th of February, on some ice. Gentry, but his eyes smiled, narrowed slightly. Valentine's Day, a beautiful day for love, or in my case, a beautiful day for delivering 3 cords of split hickory to the widow Higgins. Why do you ask? Honest him again. Where were you at 4:30 on Tuesday afternoon, Gideon? Was at work. Of course, Gentry said, gesturing to the yard, stacking, hauling, sweating. The life of a woodman is never done. Oz. And did you make any deliveries that afternoon? Omasley. No, Mott was right here until 5. Then Mott went to Keyport to see a gentleman about a new chainsaw. My current one has a chain that keeps slipping off the bar, which is very dangerous for the toes, you see. Wentin. Archie noted. Who did you see? Kenty's fellow, named Bob, at the tractor depot, Gentry said. A payment on my account. I owe him some money for a log splitter. Mott bought on credit last autumn. He's a very impatient man, Bob. He threatened to repossess my splitter if Mott didn't bring him at least $500 by Tuesday night. Traumatized. And did you bring him the money? Gentry said proudly. $500 in crisp, clean bills. Mott met a man of my word. Detective. OT depletion. Where did you get $500 in cash on a Tuesday afternoon, Gideon? Been saving, said, pin his nose with a soot-stained finger. A penny saved is a penny earned, as the old saying goes. Oput. Archie nodded, writing, keyboard, Bob Log split router in his notebook. Well, thank you for your time, Gideon. You've been very cooperative, they said. Always, Gentry said, waving his mug, as they walked back to their patrol car. Untritais. Archie looked at Kowalski. Leo, call the tractor depot in Keyport. Let us find out if Bob received his $500. Commissaire. The call to Bob took exactly 2 minutes. It was here, Bob said, over the crackling line, in be incomtized. He arrived around 5:30. He had $500 in cash, but he looked like he'd been chased by a swarm of bees. He was sweating, smelled like smoke, and his hands were shaking so hard. He dropped 2 of the bills in the gravel. I told him he has still $3,000 in the hole, bullion trombite. But he just laughed and said he was coming into some gold soon. With gold, Bob. On Nawawatlonetate, a new business partner, who didn't know they were partners yet. The guy was drunk, too, or high on wood smoke. Hard to tell with him. Archie hung up the phone and looked out the window. A new partner who didn't know they were partners yet. Oh. Leo, let's go find those traffic cameras. Obey. The digital eye of Elm Street. Post. The municipal. Building S basement was cold, but the computer monitor was warm, projecting a steady, pale blue glow onto Archie's tired face. Paul, inchnief attentively. Munaby, finished Lois. The township installed a red light camera at Chiken last month, Archie explained to Kowalski, who was currently trying to extract a peanut butter cracker from a vending machine with a ruler. It says about 750 feet from the Butterfield house. Went through there. Kowalski asked. Or traumatized. Let's see, Archie said, fast-forwarding the digital tape. The timestamp read muy sao, bomilam muy high, on Tuesday, February muy bon. Temp. Onni mutil oneteni. The traffic was sparse. A local delivery truck, a teenager on a moped, and then, at Misni Sao Bon Mi Bainam, a vehicle entered the frame and stopped at the red light. White Ford Econoline van. Almost traumatized. Across the side panel, a glittering X of silver duct tape reflected the late afternoon sun like a beacon. The driver's window was open, and through the glass they could clearly see the bushy, soot-stained beard of Gideon Gentry, navigating, who was sincerely on the steering a rhythm, in a frantic, irregular rhythm, only traumatized. Look at his brake lights, Archie said, pointing to the screen. They flickering. On, off, on, off. He is itching to move. He is terrified that light isn't going to turn green before the fire trucks start rolling down the street, Olski said, his ruler clattering to the floor. He was right there. 2 minutes before the Chinmimot call, Onsenhees told us he was at his workshop until 5, Archie said. Mott do love a suspect who provides his own silver-plated evidence. But we still need the gold, Leo. We can charge him with murder based on a duct tape van and a bad alibi. On traumatize. Where would he go with gold rolling pins? Kowalski asked. You can't exactly melt those down in a fireplace. Wait, eyes. He went to Keyport, Archie said. He would have passed through the commercial district of Edison. There's a section there known as Little India. It has 24 different jewelry shops that specialize in high-carat Indian gold. They buy, they sell, they trade. And unlike the local pawn shops, unot gold is worth. Banang war, replaced. Let's go shopping, Kowalski said. With Ba. The weight of gold, onlishly dear. The treasures of Little India, usona trontais. The search through the jewelry shops was a tedious exercise in polite rejection. Store after store turned them away with shakes of the head and looks of mild suspicion. Often in these, once, shopkeeper said, "No, we haven't seen any gold rolling pins. If we did, we would have remembered rolling dough. Ve kep ite, hot gold is a very old-fashioned luxury. Omitite. But a small, brightly lit boutique called Saraswati Fine Jewels." The young clerk behind the counter blinked when Archie showed her the photograph of the engraved rolling pins. Ombeat, her voice dropping to whisper. A man brought them in on Wednesday morning. He was very dirty. He had soot under his fingernails and smelled like a campfire. He said they were family heirlooms, but he didn't even know what the engravings represented. Pontel dance. His heart doing a small, professional dance. Union Gate. Yes, the clerk said. My manager bought them for $1,500. He thought they were beautiful. They re currently in the back room being appraised for our display case. Malby asked. Kowalski asked, under the counter, and pulled out a leather-bound logbook. Of course. State law. We scan the ID, your any cash transaction over $500. Good Jersey driver's license. How is Vasenslane, outing back at Archie, was bearded, wild-eyed, and entirely familiar to Tendley and Lenby. Goy asked. Velfline tray. On it lay two solid gold, hand-engraved rolling pins, their surfaces glittering under the halogen lights. The intricate scenes of Punjabi harvest festivals were perfectly visible, completely untouched by the soot of Elm Street, Archie said, his voice quiet but absolute. We have the gold. We have the ID. We have the van. To Homond. The interrogation of the firebug onto Wolfon, Indiana. Gideon Gentry did not look like an international art thief when he sat in the interview room at the county jail. He looked like a man who had been interrupted during a very pleasant nap, Gentry said, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. Have you come to tell me my taillights are fixed? Or perhaps you found some more firewood that needs splitting? Bendy tonalized. Barnaby at Barnaby. Barnaby Lissy, Barno placing, across from him, tray on the table. He removed the cloth, revealing the two gold rolling pins. Wenno faltered. Offer to second. His eyes darting toward the heavy metal door. Oh, very beautiful, aren't they? Gideon? Archie asked. They weigh about 3 pounds each. Solid, 22-carat gold. Hand engraved in Amritsar. The clerk at Saraswati Fine Jewels says you sold them to her for $1,500 on Wednesday morning. Konduel Kuhaitu behind bakery. Mott found them, Gentry said, his voice rising in pitch. Someone must have thrown them away. Cominville, Dackley, in a dumpster. In a dumpster? Off, Archie scoffed. A family throws away $6,000 worth of solid gold in a dumpster behind a bakery, and you just happen to be rummaging through it 5 minutes later? While your van was parked at the red light on Elm Street, at Bonzer Bonmi Bay Food Van Mame on Tuesday. Honorable eyes. Archie turned the laptop screen toward Gentry, the traffic camera footage. Look at the X of duct tape, Gideon. Look at the bearded man behind the wheel. That SU. A block away from Beatrice Butterfield's house, 2 minutes before her neighbors called the fire department. Gonna baby. Gentry stared at the screen, his rising and falling in rapid shallow breaths. The jolly, eccentric woodman was gone, replaced by a man whose eyes were suddenly very sharp and very cold. Osmateously. Mot they did not mean to hurt her, Gentry whispered, his voice losing its booming quality. When traumatized, Mot went there to get the myrik. Mot kanubik vekep, she had the gold. Mot d seen it when Mot delivered the wood. She was always showing it off, bragging about how successful they were. Mot owed Bob $500. Mot was going to lose my log splitter. On and she caught you. And she caught you, haunting his hand. His head dropping into his hands. All 3B. She started screaming. She threatened to call the police. She said Mot was a common thief, and that she could have me run out of town. Mot grabbed her. I wanted her to stop screaming. Mot day. Not think Mot was holding her that hard. But then she went quiet. She stopped moving. Otlais. And then you took the gold, Archie said, and set the room on fire to hide your tracks. Offered Benabi. Fire is clean, Gentry muttered. It eats everything. It leaves nothing but ash. Mot thought the room would go up, and everyone would think she'd left a towel near the stove. It was supposed to be an accident, he said gently. But you're a chimney sweep, Gideon. You should know better than anyone. Smoke always leaves a trace, especially when it is not in the lungs of the victim. Milifutos bluntly advertised. Click. Sergeant Kowalski will help you with the paperwork. Mot believe you Luglung be spending the next few decades in a place where the only chimneys are on the roof, and the doors don't have handles on the inside. Lukunui. The sweet taste of justice, Loquite, the local high school, was held in the gym of the local Cinnamon High School. The air was filled with the smell of cinnamon, vanilla, and the competitive tension of 62 different amateur bakers. Omatais, Urashais. Clementine Butterfield stood behind of Butterfield and Sons, her posture as straight as a ruler. She was wearing her signature navy blazer, but on her wrist she wore a single thick gold bangle that had been rescued from the family's strong box. Traumatized. We won, Clementine said as Archie walked up, looking remarkably clean for once. The lavender shortbread took first prize. Pip did the baking. He managed to avoid collapsing the dough, which Mot considered a minor miracle, or like a young man who found his calling. The great evaluation. He was currently sharing a slice of lemon tart with Penelope, who had sneaked away from the organic kale booth to offer her congratulations. Win and Penrose. Alistair Butterfield's hand with a grip that was surprisingly firm. We wanted to thank you. The house is being rebuilt. We're putting in a state-of-the-art sprinkler system and a chimney that doesn't require sweeping. Become wise, investmentalist. Alistair, Archie said, smiling. He looked down at the blue ribbon resting next to the plate of shortbread. And the gold rolling pins? Boist. They in a safety deposit box at the bank, Clementine said, her eyes twinkling. From now on, we roll our dough with stainless steel. It's much more hygienic and far less attractive to deliverymen with an excess of silver duct tape. Only again. Archie took a piece of shortbread from the plate and closed his eyes. It was rich, buttery, and had just the right hint of lavender. Boy traumatized. Excellent, Archie said, turning back toward the exit. It's almost spiritual in density. Oni Afkintet. He walked out into the bright afternoon, his pockets, entirely satisfied with a world where the only thing burning was the oven, and the only smoke was the sweet aromatic scent of success on the flaming fiasco. A case of arson, adornments, and astonishing absurdity. One dear. The chapter blinking, liar and the luminous loops of truth. Osinology, la gromoig bunter, is on volition. A modern facility built with all the ergonomic charm of a concrete bunker and designed, presumably, by an architect with a deep-seated distrust of natural light, ecologically draining environment. Often, Millie, as suitably austere for their next encounter with Harpal Singh, Bashan Epislut, Bani denied. The pleasant low-intensity interview meticulously constructed by Harpal himself, had crumbled to ash, replaced by the grim determination of justice, finally, grasping its elusive, incredibly inept prey, Pia, Ophelie, Emmy. A windowless box of beige, steel, and strategically placed, subtly humming cameras, seemed to crackle with unspoken accusation. Waste Tomatai. Harpal Singh, having received a rather urgent and decidedly less polite summons informing him that there had been some further, rather irrefutable, developments, arrived promptly. He was still disarmingly amiable, a monument to unearned confidence, Weli Borti. He even offered a cheerful, "Good afternoon, detectives, sir, and ma'am," as he was ushered into the sterile room. It was an act, Finn knew, a remarkably committed piece of self-preservation, but one that stretched the boundaries of polite credulity past their breaking point. One been listening, and almost supernaturally calm, a zen-like imperviousness to inconvenient facts. He looked, Finn thought, like a man whose biggest worry was whether his naan was perfectly puffed, not whether he was about to be charged with a brutal murder. Go, Mr. Singh. Finn began, his voice devoid of its previous geniality, now as cold and sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. He gestured to the hard, unyielding chair opposite him. Otui Gislis. Last time entire som offentui are entirely truthful with Las. We had the pleasure of your acquaintance. Onabiti, his dromatai, Lucin. His bland features unwavering, his smile, a curious, unsettling thing, never quite reaching his eyes. Mott assure you. Detective, Mott was as honest as the day is long. My memory, like a particularly well-maintained hard drive, is impeccably accurate. Perhaps there has been some misunderstanding. A miscommunication of some trivial detail, perhaps, Wiskaldur oddly smiled. He offered another small, disarming smile. Finn should face to the often yielding surface of the table. It was, he often mused, the little smiles that drove him truly mad. The utterly unearned ones, called the matter, of connoisseur Finchleting abroad, Millie, fruiter, Milliway, and a connoisseur blunt of shattered, illusionist, decided it was time to bypass the pleasantries entirely. We listeningized. She slammed thick sheaf of paper. Harpal S. meticulously collected timesheets from Jebediah Truckle S. hauling and hauling-related activities, Inc., onto the polished steel table. The sound echoed in the quiet room, like a judicial gavel, striking a verdict, Oritrom timesheets. Mr. Singh, she growled, her voice a low, dangerous rumble that could curdle industrial strength cleanser, indicate you didn't work on Valentine's Day. Not a single hour. Your employer, a Mr. Jebediah Truckle, my committee, a man of surprising administrative integrity given his general disposition, was rather insistent. He has a photographic memory for who works and who does. You lied, Mr. Singh. Quite brazenly, Mott might add, onto without a twitch. without a single falter in his calm demeanor, was pure gold, Finn thought, a gleaming example of human absurdity. The sheer audacity was truly breathtaking. Onaby. Oh, that's just a simple misunderstanding. Ma'am. My employer, Jebediah. He is a good man, bless his greasy overalls, but he has an unfortunate penchant for recreational poker, cheap cigars, and, shall we say, rather fluid relationship with his administrative duties. A known proclivity for mixing his dates and forgetting who was where when. He must have simply recorded the dates wrong. A clerical error. Mott. Assure you, I was definitely working that day. An extra long shift to Healy's incentive. Very hush cargo. Top secret, you understand. A matter of national pretzel security, perhaps, being a legitimate excuse. Finn felt a vein throb rhythmically in his temple. His tentacle. National pretzel security. The man was either genuinely deluded, or the most audacious liar he'd ever met, owning it tightly. Finn resisted the urge to rub his forehead vigorously. He pictured Jebediah Truckle, a man who, by all accounts, was allergic to paperwork and whose filing system consisted of tossing invoices into a vague important stuff corner. Contagious. Yet, according to Harpel, Jebediah was now orchestrating an elaborate, calendar-manipulating conspiracy to cover for his non-existent work schedule. The lie was so outrageously flimsy, it could have been woven from dandelion fluff, carried by a gentle breeze, Alfin said, pushing his laptop forward. Ve kepte hat, a deliberate, slow movement. The rhythmic hum of the machine, a subtle backdrop to the increasing tension in the room. Again, his movement, were designed to build maximum psychological pressure, to watch for the crack. The tiny fissure in Harpel's composed facade. Wenby, let me assure you, this issue is not a clerical error, and Mr. Truckle's recollection was surprisingly vivid. He remembered you not being there, primarily because it was Valentine Angus Day, and he had specifically scheduled you off so he could regrout his bathroom tiles. An annual ritual, apparently. Let me finish. We have pictures. In fact, Mr. Singh, we have video. Recorded, digitally preserved, and time-stamped for your continued viewing pleasure. Traumatized. Screen around. Displaying the grainy, yet undeniable, traffic camera footage. It showed the familiar intersection, the flow of mundane traffic. And then, at the precise moment, Harpel's van, look Mr. Singh. That's as your street, a mere Becham Namui feet from Blossomview Lane. Blossomview Lane, and that right there. At Mr. Singh at precisely Bon Mitam PM. Just as the Chin Motmot call for the fire, at Alicia Sundari's residence, came screaming through the port plankton dispatch system. He pointed a finger, flintlight, deliberately at the unmistakable image of the white van with its distinctive silver duct-taped flank on the side. It was like in a Shenton villain in a silent film caught in the act. His expression, however, remaining strangely blank. As hastily, Mr. Singh is clearly your van. Brake lights flickering, if you look closely. A profound sense of urgency, one might say. Almost as if the driver was rather eager to depart the area immediately after igniting a domestic inferno. He stared at the screen. Not a flicker of emotion. Not a single tell. His eyes, fixed on the damning image, remained as blank and placid as a freshly plastered wall. Finn expected anger, fear, confusion, anything. For a long, drawn-out moment of excruciating silence, he simply said, with a surprising amount of indignation, "Well, why do Mott have to be there?" My van has a very common model number, you know. White vans are everywhere. White traumatized. His voice, held in a tone, petulance of a child, falsely accused of stealing a cookie. Nookie. Finn could almost see him pouting. Potai traumatai. Finn felt not just a vein, but an entire network of blood vessels throbbing furiously in his temple. Why do Mott have to be there? The sheer, unadulterated, unblushing gall of the man. It was, Finn thought, a truly spectacular example of human imperviousness to basic logic. Falsehoods. Was now encountering a new level of denial. A veritable Zen master of falsehoods. Wanetin. Mr. Singh? Finn retorted. His voice now, a low growl, barely controlled. What does that even mean? Are you suggesting, perhaps, that your van possesses a particularly rebellious streak and drives itself to crime scenes, only to park precisely the way for optimal viewership before returning to your driveway? Or, perhaps, that a nefarious, identically duct-taped twin van of yours is on a secret joyride to commit arson and theft? Mott, Harple stated, his tone defensive, as if challenging a particularly stubborn, albeit indisputable, fact of the universe. But that doesn't mean anything. Mott could have been driving to get a sandwich, or seeing a friend who enjoys impromptu arson displays. With inni. Offertized, Finn said, leaning closer. His eyes locked onto Harple's unnervingly placid gaze. Because I saw it with my own two eyes, on incontrovertible video evidence, which has now been reviewed multiple times by multiple, very competent, very sober individuals. And because, Mr. Singh, Winai Masir, Bud, you also told me your truck was overheating in the Sundari driveway days before, yet their son never saw it. An invisible overheating truck, a marvel of modern non-engineering. And because you owed $19,000 on a brand new rig, were utterly stone, broke until Valentine's Day morning, Wampally. And then came up with $1,000 immediately after the fire. And because, frankly, Mr. Singh, you an amateur arsonist, with a remarkably persistent, incredibly persistent, incredibly unlucky, and utterly suspicious habit of being involved in 8 previous unfortunate fires, none of which, Wanamatlite, funnily enough, resulted in any kind of insurance payout, thus suggesting a deeper, more artistic motivation, according to Captain Sparkflicker, our resident expert in the aesthetics of accidental combustion. Does any of this sound like a misunderstanding to you? Or merely the clumsy, panicked, uninultais? A man desperate to cover his tracks, onto you intention, applies. The sterile room echoing with Harple's increasingly outlandish denials, and Finn's barely suppressed frustration. Harple Singh had an answer for everything, quant hing commetized. But every inconsistency was a misunderstanding. A clerical error on the part of hapless Jebediah, a misremembered detail, due to his extremely long work shifts which did to exist, a brief, entirely innocent detour for an impromptu, pizza-related delivery, on your way tabby essentially. Whose? None of it, of course, because he was making it up as he went along, desperately trying to construct a fragile house of cards from sheer, unadulterated, almost theatrical falsehoods, onfitting how a greeting brings, turnip, high traumatized in mint, Feigenbrint. He howled in the chicken coop, while Finn felt arguing with a particularly well-dressed, but dim-witted turnip, on bitlit, offero her honestly. Millie something to behold. Finn, Millie would later muse while drowning her interrogation woes in a suspiciously strong, heavily sugared mug of instant coffee, He genuinely believed he was the smartest person in the room, traumatized. That we, the experienced detectives, were somehow missing a vital piece of the intricate tapestry of his brilliant deception, probably some incredibly convoluted alibi involving an alien abduction and a very convincing alibi from a family of Bigfoot, unbrut inquiries. It was painfully clear he was clinging to the bottom of the cognitive ladder by his fingernails, covered in burnt sawdust and desperation. Harpal Singh, for all his practiced calm and velvet voice, never broke on Greeting Bay, have if he gaze in a bay. Luffy, his cerebral deception, a lutus correbent, and that radiated a profound lack of remorse. It was like looking into a perfectly smooth, unruffled pond, reflecting nothing but the blandest version of reality. Koi Wild had from physically sent, been bent himself, can be, Blissinaby, Kentley, Finn threw up his hands, metaphorically speaking, to prevent Fiznef from throwing a perfectly good coffee mug, one with a chipped handle, but still at the wall, onto Beanie alt-right. All right, Mr. Singh. Yeah, he said, pushing in back his chair that seemed to momentarily perturb Harpal's placid demeanor. Let us call it a day. We all felt be, shall we say, although exhausted the most interesting anecdotes for now. But rest assured we will probably be in touch again. Soon. Very soon. Or, sir, whatever you need, sir. My door, like my heart, is always open, Harpal replied, rising smoothly, his polite facade utterly uncracked, as if he had just been interviewed for a particularly boring job as a professional curtain folder. Onfitly, Benlinsen bid, in Truekuan, Borven in Tromelade, exiting the precinct with the quiet confidence of a man who believed he had expertly outsmarted the entire Port Plankton police force. Gend, Tomatast, Hefind, offered case. Finn for his composure and profound exasperation for his sheer, unadulterated mendacity, onto the steel table, Fehaurit respiration. The metallic clatter, a dull echo of his mounting frustration. Traumatized. Met, damn it all, Millie. Mott want to charge this guy right now. He has, lying through his teeth, he has a motive, he has means, and he has a distinct history of highly inconvenient infernos, accidental, fire-related disasters. But we need more. We need something absolutely ironclad. Something linking him directly, physically, irrefutably, to the scene of the murder. Something beyond just a grainy video of his incredibly unique, duct-taped van, Altis Altway in Listleis. Victim. We have to put his dirty little hands on something undeniably criminal in that house. We need something more concrete than just a well-oiled, beautifully articulated theory. Greeting, traumatized, Millie said, her voice surprisingly gentle, recognizing his internal struggle. She reached across the table and placed a reassuring, if slightly calloused, hand on his arm. Cause now, my friend. A very fat, very indisputable warrant is already being signed. His cell phone records. Let us see where Mr. Singh's cellular device, that tireless tattletale of modern existence, was cavorting on Valentine's Day, shall we? Phones, unlike Harpal, rarely lie. Ortly traumatized. The warrant cut by a district judge, Thaddeus, who legend had it, was more interested in the lingering mystery of her perpetually disappearing stapler than in Finn S. urgent legal requests. Arrived on Finn S. desk the next morning, traumatized. The cell phone records, an exhaustive digital chronicle of Harpal's movements, pings, ignored calls, and even the time he spent inexplicably playing Angry Birds. Avian Apocalypse were a veritable treasure trove of irrefutable data on the Monimi Dentley, Finn penibly, and Millie room. Their eyes straining at the illuminated screen, each pixel holding the potential for truth, each digital footprint a step closer to justice. We ancient Liz. Finn meticulously traced Harple's digital breadcrumbs, following the subtle signals pinging off various cell towers around Port Plankton with the zeal of a tracker dog on a scent. And there it was, unmistakable, in Listening gazed. Not only was Harple's phone definitively confirmed to be in immediate vicinity of Blossom View Lane, at Motfee, the time of the murder and subsequent arson offered traumatized, its pings precisely correlating with the traffic camera footage of his fleeing van, but immediately after the fire alarm was raised, Osibinen phone began a new purposeful journey Anno Eikenentlies, and unerringly with the unwavering accuracy of a homing pigeon to a particular section of Edison, Port Plankton, an area Finn knew well, a place of vibrant culture, aromatic spices, and a bustling economy that pulsed with a rhythm all its own, Ophiel Whiteley said. An area affectionately known to locals, and precisely marked on Finn's internal mental map as the Glimmergate Market District. Waisalor, the disparate pieces of information slotting into place's certainty. Sudden electrifying certainty, Binny Barnaby. He'd previously thought of the district as renowned Spice Palace Restaurant, a popular spot famous for its exquisite butter chicken and mysteriously silent valet service. But Glimmergate was more than just restaurants, unpotais. It was a bustling, vibrant population. A labyrinth of clothing stores showcasing resplendent silks, aromatic spice shops, filling the air with exotic scents, bustling electronics stores selling the latest gadgets, and, of course, Orbitambi fornetly. Jewelry stores, Belia whispered, her red eyes wide with the triumphant realization as she stared at the same map Finn was mentally constructing, Gwyneth of them. Well, maybe 24, specializing in buying and selling Indian high karat gold, hand-etched bangles, expensive, culturally significant gold. The very kind we're really looking for, Gondoris crazily, a sound of profound self-reproach, what crowed. That was also strangely, incredibly triumphant, Comite. Motat was a monumental idiot. A fool. All this time, we've been fruitlessly canvassing generic, grimy pawn shops, the desperate, unglamorous underbelly of Port Plankton, Ofliur Dinetabi. Convinced Tyson the Goite. We were chasing the ghost of pawn shop dreams. Dreams, but why would he? Harple though stauit he, where gold would be bought at rock bottom prices, where specific high carat Indian designs would immediately raise suspicious eyebrows among the grizzled dealing owners. No, he'd go where the gold was valued highest, where he could blend in, where such specific items were commonplace, a daily commodity. He'd go to Glimmergate, to the very Indian jewelry stores that specialize in precisely that kind of gold, only re-rating in Finchley Teist. A new wave of urgently re-energized small analysis room, as invigorating as a fresh pot of strong coffee. Finn, now fully recovered from his pawn shop, induced melancholia, assembled a fresh squad of eager young detectives, Onimbani, equanimously traumatized. He equipped them with pristine high-resolution copies displaying the distinctive bangles, and dispatched them en masse to Glimmergate. Every store, Finn instructed, his voice firm, authoritative, a clarion call for truth, Autumnweiser. Every single mere establishment that advise Golobent, you will show them these flyers. You ask who was selling bangles like these on February Muyabun, or the Muyalam, or even the Muya Sautian, and most importantly, Kwan records. Every single one, no exceptions, no stone unturned, not even a particularly dusty, gold-flecked one under a display case filled with suspiciously cheerful trinkets on Shintabi. A true needle in a haystack operation. But this time, Finn knew, with an unshakable certainty that settled deep in his gut, that they were looking in the right haystack. It was now practically radiating. Bartabi, the pungent, gently undeniable market. Truthom from every sari shop and spice merchant stall in the Glimmergate market. On Binutroting, Decrete. He was sitting at his desk at a detailed map of staring Glimmergate market district, contemplating the sheer number of intricately named gold shops, when his phone rang. Kon officer, Penchesod, Detective Officer Alt Offer, Albeit, Anabi. At one a keen but perpetually nervous young officer named Detective Officer Millicent Millie Pingsworth, whose voice usually fluttered like a frightened hummingbird. Onchinin, Detective McFizzle. Millie's voice was, for once, clear, sharp, and laced with an unmistakable excitement that bordered on pure euphoria. Gwynmet, think we got something. Down here at Jewels of the Indus. There's a salesgirl here, and she says she bought a bangle bracelet just like those you showed us just a few days ago from a guy, and she remembered him because he paid in crumpled bills and had an unnerving smile with the patrol ties. He sprang from his chair, adrenaline now coursing through his veins like a freshly uncorked bottle of cheap celebratory champagne. He practically vaulted over Penny S. cheerfully organized desk, startling a small ceramic owl, and burst out of the precinct, Alminvid, traumatized. He hailed the first frantic cab he saw, driven by a man whose patience was clearly thinner than a politician's promise, and whose driving skills were directly, inversely proportional to the urgency of Finn's request onto Mudikinadais. He barked an address, barely suppressing the primal urge to yell. And step on it, or Mott swear to the great gods of justice. Mott will arrest you for vehicular mediocrity. Widi Dinukoed, Sar. Like a kid. Reputable superhero cape as he dashed towards the waiting yellow vehicle, leaving a faint, yet distinct, scent of stale coffee and impending triumph in his wake. Utadai traumatized. The cab, protesting, with various rattles and squeaks, careened through the chaotic yet vibrance of port plankton, arriving with a final dramatic squeal of tires at the ornate, brightly painted doors of Jewels of the Indus, Wititizity. Osfed, the shop, the silver and sparkling gemstones, was bustling with customers, its air thick with the murmur of conversation, the enticing jingle of 1,000 tiny bells, and the faint, sweet smell of incense. Omatoyet, by the time Finn, slightly disheveled but utterly focused, burst through the doors, who listening. Detective Millie Pingsworth and the dignified, turbaned owner, Mr. Chatterjee, were already waiting. Doxinophile, etched with a mixture of grave concern and careful professionalism, held a transaction receipt in his hand, its small, white paper surface somehow radiating an almost celestial importance. Ossiby, greatly. In Quibbleton, like many jurisdictions across the country, local law, specifically the Anti-Fence and Gemstone Tracking Act of Motinchin Tamibay, required photo ID for all significant jewelry sales, a measure designed to thwart fences and track illicit goods on the Liffey. Had right there, stapled to the receipt, glaring up off at Finn like a personal affront, a mocking, undeniable photograph of the very man he sought. Untailai. Traumatized. Finn, his heart hammering with a frantic rhythm with the sweet, intoxicating taste of undeniable victory, looked at the receipt, the date, February Mighty Bow, Valentine Day. Then, Valentine's Day, the precise date of Alicia Sundari's brutal murder and subsequent fiery obfuscation. A mere hour, perhaps 90 minutes set, after the Chinmotmot call from Blossom View Lane. The item, 2 High karat gold bangles, distinctive, familiar, and the ID, Orbi Oscritlice. Photograph. A face Finn now knew intimately, a face that had haunted his recent waking hours, one of unsettling blandness, yet now radiating an unmistakable aura of guilt. The face of Harpal Singh, East. His chosen photograph, his bland, unblinking eyes staring back from the card, completely devoid of any trace of remorse or regret, his date of birth, his current, thankfully still unburnt, address, meist. Finn felt of emotion a dizzying cocktail of triumph, grim satisfaction, and a raw, almost tearful vindication that constricted his throat. Quai Ingut, Ishmat. His hands trembled slightly, the fragile evidence suddenly feeling as heavy as a lead ingot, as momentous as a final judgment. When he died, the endless clues of frustrate traumatize. The patronizing lies, the wary cynicism, the endless cups of lukewarm coffee, all of it dissolved in this single, irrefutable moment of crystal clear truth. Offerbeen, we had him be Barnaby. The words catching in his throat, a small, rarely seen crack in his cynical, world-weary armor. Ancient. Goddess Bilisit Kubi, duct tape, and grease fire at Grumpy Gas, and the tireless, diligent detective work of myself and my intrepid team, we had intrepidate him. The greasy goody deli, fire spirit whispering, pond scum, Ufimple arsonist. We had him cold. The entire, ludicrous truth, right here in my hand, who had arrived shortly after Finn. Now softening with a rare, profound glimmer of satisfaction, simply nodded. Unting a Kwanber, an Olber. He senber, Minuin Twanabi, listening Olabi, the call, placed to mobilize a team for Hapal Singh, her voice betraying a hint of triumph as she relayed the details to the dispatcher. Omini implies, in Kont. Peace. Tragically hilarious puzzle was now firmly in place, secured with a digital fingerprint and a stack of expensive gold, often traumatized. When Harpal Singh was finally apprehended, again, this time dragged, from his unassuming duplex of Vekeptehat, considerably less politeness and significantly more handcuffs, the moment lacked the dramatic flair Finn McFizzle had internally choreographed. Ishikai traumatai. Iten, there was no grand chase, no tearful, cinematic and confession lights. He simply lawyered up immediately, a predictable and, quite frankly, rather uncinematic yet safe development that never listened to any more of Harpal's ingenious fabrications. The unblinking, defiant man, as he was led away, then finally uttered, "Well, Mr. Singh, that is good. You're probably going to need one of those. Perhaps two, or maybe an entire legal team of exceptionally talented prevaricators. And, for the love of all that is decent, Undumania, who specialized, who, in profound delusion and pyromania, often, as him, justice often slowed, coffee-fueled, process, riddled with frustrations and unexpected detours, but with enough persistence would we entwine to join. Banatai, a healthy dose of expressed talkative deli owner. It eventually caught up to even the most outwardly unflappable boy, duplicitous villains. One, Ofenaki. Finn just hoped his coffee consumption in an early grave before the next one, or a avarice. The alchemist of arson and the ascent of avarice descend, hypnotized. The arrest of Harpal Singh sent a ripple, not of shock, but of grim, exhausted satisfaction through the Port Plankton Police Department. Indy indicted, involving a holding cell. Agreed. Finn McFizzle, after ensuring Harpal or Anda, Offie after ensuring Harpal was comfortably in a holding cell and had begun consulting with his remarkably prompt defense attorney, finally allowed himself a moment of reflective quiet back at his desk. Uden during it icely. Fuel dotai gent. He leaned back, his chair groaning under the accumulated weight of cynical years, and began the meticulous process of connecting the final dots, of crafting the narrative of Harpal Singh Sen, unraveling. Often, only Harpalese offered a mind. And a mind seemingly calibrated to invent falsehoods on the fly. Knew the full, unvarnished truth of what prompted his violent attack on Alicia Sundari, unbentennebiwidi. Miti, sharp instincts, Penny's meticulous research, and the unsolicited yet invaluable, dramatic insights of Captain Tibby Sparkflicker had pieced together a compelling, albeit tragic and absurdly bungled, theory of the crime, only me quite traumatized. It was a story of foolish choices and a deeply misguided belief in the cleansing power of fire. Beating. The heart of Harpal S. motivation, est. Asked by Finn S. dogged investigation was strikingly mundane, yet utterly consuming. Money, specifically, a daunting muichin. Hangfang, dola debt for a newly acquired, gleaming, 18-wheeler cab, onter Opel of traumatized. Harpal saw this new rig not just as a vehicle, but as his ticket to a better life, a symbol of upward mobility, a gleaming, chrome-plated embodiment of his own stunted version of the American dream, ornament on autized. He had sunk every spare penny into a deposit, only to find himself perpetually behind on payments, clinging to the truck by the financial equivalent of a frayed thread. Coprocently. Sparkflicker, the borough's resident arson alchemist, proved his worth beyond the uete prophetic antennae. Harpal's arrest, Tibby, unleashed from the previous constraints of official procedure, provided Finve Kep Ite Hahat his extensive and wildly imaginatives. Sparkflicker S. Dossier of Domestic Incendiaries, the Singh Files. Onvite, Solpien. You see, Finn, it all makes a darkly comedic sense now, Tibby explained, during a particularly verbose lunchtime debrief illustrating his points. Vekepte hat gestures that nearly upended a bowl of dubious chili. Gon's a self-taught, truly terrible pyrotechnic artist, a fiery apprentice. Fied, as it were, my unofficial, yet wildly compelling, theory is that the first 7 fires in Harpal's illustrious incendiary history were not random misfortunes. Oh no, they were experimental. A grim, misguided educational journey. Harpal, bless his utterly misguided soul, was meticulously, clumsily, and rather conspicuously experimenting with how to ignite properties, and, more importantly, how to obscure his tracks. He was perfecting his disguised arson technique on the accidents all while learning from his tragically obvious mistakes. Mistakes? Greywhite traumatized. Tibby then launched into a detailed, if largely theoretical, analysis of Harple's learning curve. First, the spontaneous air conditioner box combustion, too isolated, too neat. Then, the self-loathing flower pot under the deck, a bit more subtle but still lacking scale. He progressed, traumatized. You see Finn gaining confidence with each small, accidental conflagration. It was a macabre trial and error approach to criminality. Offered fire, the grand opus that almost completely destroys. And 2 cars, Tibby had strong suspicions, owned by Frittized. He even, and this is purely conjecture based on the metaphysical vibes of the smoke, mind you, supposedly took out life insurance policies on his poor wife and 2 sons. The end goal, Mott surmise, was to kill them for the insurance money. A truly nefarious expansion of his pyrotechnic portfolio, fictionally, had failed spectacularly. His family remained unharmed, and Harple, due to lack of direct evidence, was never charged in connection to those 8 fires. But the facts, TB concluded, adjusting his fireman-esque cap, which he wore even indoors, they certainly make you wonder. Don't they? A serial pyro-experimentalist, desperately seeking a payout, quantity of the financial exploitation by fire list for the time being, at least, and the Keyport truck dealership, breathing down his neck for the mounting mutiny. Harple had become truly desperate. He needed money, and he needed it fast. Consequently, he still morbid, itir ali warped, and avaricious thing, turned to Alicia Sundari and her family. He remembered Mr. Sundari Smith, the proud entrepreneur, showing him around his beautiful new house in Blossomview Lane, almost boastful in his hard-won success. Automating money bags, involving overflowing money bags. Harple, Findley, a man from it Altel, Matan, froming well Ted. What fumbled, awfully, overflowing money bags, was under the distinct and utterly mistaken impression that these successful, honest business owners kept their immense riches stashed somewhere within the pristine confines of their immaculate suburban home. Quite tently, he saw quite traumatized. He saw dollar freshly painted walls, stacks of cash piled high in the tasteful decor. He saw an answer to his problems. Comedy. The scene Trinhinning suddenly made perfect sinister, yet comically inept sense. Harple, his experimental phase of arson mastery theoretically complete, had gone to the Sundari house with a full-fledged, ill-conceived plan to extort or steal. Oli in Shoulderbeten, Al-Tau. He showed up under the guise of an overheating truck, an excuse so flimsy and seasonally inappropriate in midwinter that it would only work on someone either incredibly polite, or tragically naive, or actively choosing to ignore glaring logical fallacies. Foite bid, Finlit. Suspected was to scout the house again, perhaps even gain entry, if Alicia was home alone. But fate, in its usual frustrating and utterly inconvenient manner, intervened. Rishi, Alicia's mube-year-old son, arrived home from school, interrupting Harple's nefarious scheme, on-way traumatized. Unexpected present, his achievement being an unconvincing story about needing water for an invisible, non-existent, and miraculously non-overheating vehicle, but not deterred, securing a tenuous extension from his truck dealer. Until Monday, Valentine's Day, on GT again. He wasn't going to let that bad timing happen again. This time he would be sure. Befeld overused. S-Day, a day meant for sappy cards, romantic dinners, and questionable Cupid costumes. Harpal Singh returned to Blossomview Lane. His desperation had curdled into cold resolve to fund Promelis. Right. He had barely Finn assumed was a particularly unlucrative trucking gig. Just enough for a minimal, face-saving payment to his truck dealer, Sal. But he needed so much more, earning a decent, sufficiently. Wool. He parked his uniquely white van down the street, hoping the slight distance would negate any immediate suspicion. A hope that, as the traffic camera footage later proved, was laughably misplaced. Into Sulby's, our Sundari home. The known acquaintance Alicia would willingly open her door to, trusting his familiar face. Finn imagined the brief, horrifying confrontation. Wanishting Harpal. Harpal, his mild-pulse demeanor dropping away like a flimsy theatrical curtain, demanding, "Where do you keep your money? The cash? The gold?" Barning Atlee offered Alicia Sundari, however, didn't have the answer he desperately sought. Her husband's money was largely tied up in his legitimate businesses, the restaurant, the gas stations, not secreted away beneath the sofa cushions or tucked inside a biscuit tin, vinaigretist. Didn't realize was that Mr. Sundari Smith wasn't actually deeply involved in the gas station's daily cash flow, where most of the liquid capital was handled. That was his partner, Omai Bentley Phippy Barnaby. Mr. Sundari Smith focused on the restaurants. This vital, yet subtle, piece of financial information was something Harpal, blinded by avarice, hadn't known or cared to verify. NCU team traumatized when Alicia couldn't produce the phantom millions. Harpal was convinced lay hidden when she lightly resisted, perhaps fought back in righteous indignation or sheer terror. Harpal panicked on Momidi Might. He grabbed her, desperate, trying to strangle the information out of her, his grip tightening with a brutal, single-minded focus. But there was no money to give, only terror. And then, in a terrifying escalation of his botched robbery, he killed her, Quine Traumat Everest. With Alicia Sundari lying lifeless at his feet, he noticed the glint of gold on her right wrist, her distinctive, precious bangle bracelets. Quanpult, traumatized, the Diane confronting Mect, leaving the telltale superficial scratch on the back of her hand, the tiny, almost invisible mark that would later become a silent, screaming witness to his brutality, of a seasoned criminal, or an individual utterly devoid of empathy. Harpal Singh, the master of the small experimental fire, quickly reverted to his practiced MO. Fire was his thing. Fire erased traces. Fire obscured, destroyed, purified. Ulston. He would burn the house he often by. Everyone, he calculated, had Chilix died accidentally in a tragic, inexplicable house fire. And his footsteps, his clumsy fingerprints, his heinous act, all of it would be gone, reduced to ash and smoke. He ignited the calculated act and fled, disappearing into the suburban twilight. His first stop, however, was not a panicked flight from justice, but a methodical, pre-planned continuation of his plan. The Glimmergate Market District, Little India, Umnishney. There in the unsuspecting jewels of the Indus, a thriving hub, he pawned the stolen bangles for a paltry sum. He pawned the stolen, a fraction of their true worth, but enough to provide him with that crucial minimum $1,000 payment on his crushing debt. Umanabidwald. Then, slightly inebriated as Sal, the Keyport truck dealer, had later noted, Smelling of cheap whiskey, he drove to Keyport, making his token payment, believing himself free and clear. He thought he had committed the perfect crime. Almost. Feeble, legal, outright. The jury trial. Held in the newly renovated Quibbleton County Courthouse, was a veritable legal drama. Onchinically, Eliragilsni. Elara, the equalizer Vance, presented a mountain of meticulously gathered evidence. Dr. Finch S. definitive, Gebindripil, Yojicus Pierre, Epita. Port, detailing the manual strangulation, and the distinct scratch on the hand. Priya S. and Rishi's poignant testimonies about their mother and Harpal's suspicious appearance. Captain Tibby Sparkflicker S. expert, and, for once, commensurate assessment of Harpal's previous fire assessment. Harpal's previous fire history, now used to establish a chilling pattern of behavior. Finn S. own unearthing of the Keyport truck death and the undeniable traffic camera footage of Harpal's getaway, and finally, Odinga traumatized. The indisputable receipt from Jules smoking the Indus, bearing Harpal Singh S. bland, yet utterly incriminating. Driver SS license photograph, perfectly captured, selling the victim's jewelry just hours after her murder. A very good, emotionally charged, and logically devastating presentation of their case. The hours, Finn expected one juror, for a surprisingly short 2 hours. Finn suspected one juror just wanted to go home and watch reality television. Found Harpal Singh guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, Wansijin, Hendley, aggravated arson, theft, and hindering his own apprehension, Traumatlud, had stumbled, exasperatedly, but triumphantly, to its final, satisfying destination, Umindesinabil. Harpal Singh was sentenced to life in prison in the state of Quibbleton, win for Priznikivikashan Commustate, Mesdable, known for its surprisingly inedible mystery meat and consistently faulty plumbing, where he remains to this day, trying to find loopholes in his confinement or ignite a spontaneous internal combustion of the correctional officers' wine. Correctional officers, Onshin. Some of my families, Priya told Finn later, her voice still. A quiet strength, but now also a quiet strength. They wanted the death penalty for him, for what he did. But Mot don't Mot really don't Mot ve kep anote him to be in jail for the rest of his life. Kwan said, everything that life, isolated, alone, knowing what he did, knowing he failed, quite traumatized. Priya Sundari Smith, the brave young woman who had been forced to lead her family through an unimaginable tragedy, wrote Finn McFizzle a heartfelt letter. Her words, though infused with her family press enduring grief, were profoundly kind and filled with gratitude. McFizzle was very, very diligent. She wrote her elegant script, a testament to her strength. Awfully, who's fine who did this to my mom. And he did exactly what he promised. Mot met, glad that we were able to get her some justice. It won to bring her back, but it means everything. Oprah to Y Corklight. Finn folded the letter victory took to his breast pocket. He rarely received such overt displays of gratitude. It was, he admitted, a surprisingly pleasant sensation, a balm to the soul in a profession steeped in sorrow. Ombiol bitonsneist. Mot think. Priya had confided in him. Her voice thick with unshed tears was when we cremated her, after everything was over, because that is it. She was gone. Half the worst of everything that ever happened. Goril Tromphet, Twiatlace. And she would be so incredibly right now. Mot met earning good money at my job. Maud have a house that's really nice, you know. My husband is great. My in-laws are wonderful. Like, she is never going to see that life for me. Finn and Maud hate that. Importantly, my daughter, my little Alicia, she's never going to know who her grandmother was. Like, she is just going to see pictures. And that is it. Just pictures. Alicia, Sundari, Finn reflected. Watching the Port Plankton sunset cast long, weary shadows across his desk was, in the cruelest irony, a victim of her own hard-won success. Overcomatized. Her prosperity, her openness, her very kindness had painted a target on her back for a desperate, misguided, and utterly callous man. Identified, ently. That this acquaintance, this man whose son played baseball with her nephews, this seemingly innocuous individual, would do her such irreparable harm. Bad things, truly horrible, illogical things, happened to nice people, often, with an unnerving frequency. The saddest, most unshakable, most perpetually annoying truth about his work, all of his years of it, was that singular, painful fact. A long-awaited gulp of his now cold coffee. He glanced at his desktop monitor, Onayet, for the Brahentley flare, who had banayed. On it, Penny, with her characteristic and pursely annoying flair, for the drama had helpfully and annoyingly replaced his screensaver with a brightly colored sticky note that read, "Next case, those mime artists." Forensic analysis indicates an overabundance of invisible wallets. Get ready for the silent scream of justice, Finn. Fomsu donut run, your treat. Offer Trondofen. Finn sighed. The universe, it seemed, was already lining up another uniquely infuriating, ridiculously convoluted challenge feast for him. And another donut. He wouldn't have it any other way. Probably.